the inside source for Texas Tech sports from the head man himself. This is the Kirby Hocutt Show on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com. Welcome. Kirby Hocutt Show. Robert Giovanetti alongside Kirby Hocutt. It's time for Ask the AD off of the Carpet World chat line. And Kirby, this is some deep stuff here, including questions about the growth of Lubbock. But one of the questions we had earlier was about, can you kind of explain the Matt Wells situation that was made public last week, and about the Title IX situation, how that kind of ties together?
Yeah, happy to do that. And first would just begin by saying it's a horrific situation, right? When you think about the survivors and what they experienced, that is nothing that anybody should have to go through. So first, express that. And, obviously the man at Utah State has been found guilty, and he's where he needs to be. That being said, there was a Title IX report that was filed in November of 15 from an anonymous source, which would have been this gentleman's senior year of college. So Utah State finished their season in December that year, and it wasn't until January that the vice president for student conduct asked Matt Wells to sit in an interview with him. I think the article that was written made it seem
they had the chronology wrong.
Yeah, and it made it seem like Coach Wells was one of the interviewers in that discussion. He was not, and nor should he have been, because as athletic administrators, as coaches, we're not trained to investigate Title IX complaints. And let me say this, Robert, I can promise you, had there been any inclination that this man was responsible for those actions, I can tell you with confidence that Matt Wells would not have played him. He would no longer have been on his team. We held back our best wide receiver this past week. Our best wide receiver did not go to Morgantown with us. And I'm not going to tell you why, but I'm going to say it was much, much, much less.
Well, even on the same scale.
No, not even in the same conversation.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, from the discipline action I've seen Coach Wells take, from what his previous ADs, my colleagues, said during their time at Utah State, you will be hard-pressed to find a more strict disciplinarian than Coach Wells is. But he sat in at the request of the AD and the vice president when they interviewed that player in January. The Title IX issue went on down the road. Nothing ever came of that. And it wasn't until many months later that individuals went to the criminal side, to the police, with these allegations. And when this guy was charged in August, there was an article written at that time where Coach Wells said, "This is the first I've heard of this." Well, he was in that meeting in January, but that was higher education, a Title IX, in which nothing ever came of it. The charges in August, by this time, the kid had been drafted in the NFL. He was at camp, and the charges came out, and Matt was just in shock that he was responsible for this. So when you get into Title IX issues within higher education, you got the higher education piece to it, and then at times you have the criminal piece to it. Those are two very separate processes. But beyond all that, I can say without a doubt, had Matt Wells had any inclination that those anonymous reports were accurate or were true, that individual would not have been playing for him.
And the same for you and President Skubanek, as you did your due diligence. Obviously, this was a story by that time. You'd seen that about Torrey Green when you guys interviewed him. And Matt has been always very forthright about that, Coach Wells.
Yeah, and we talked about it. We talked about it amongst ourselves. We talked about it with Coach Wells. And, in talking about it with Coach Wells, it was obvious to us immediately. His commitment to doing the right thing, his commitment and understanding of how a Title IX allegation and process works on a college campus. Because when we made mention of, our senior woman administrator, Dr. Judy Henry, is also a Title IX coordinator for the university. And any time a Title IX allegation comes to us, if we hear something, if a young person brings something to us, we take it to Judy immediately. And Coach Wells had full understanding of that process and Judy's role and how it works.
And Judy passes it on to the campus Title IX, because athletics should not be investigating anything involving anybody, employees, student athletes, anything, right? Because you don't want to have, as you mentioned, we're not trained investigators, but also you don't want to have any other potential influence on that.
No, that's not our job. It doesn't need to be our job. It needs to be with those professionals that are trained to handle those things. And that's not an athletic director, and that's not a head coach.
Yep. So some questions coming in, but I think you've already answered those. People asking, did you know about the incident before last week? Yes, you did. But again, Coach Wells first made aware, January meeting, not made aware of everything else until August. And so...
but we were not aware that this article was coming out last week.
No.
We didn't know that. But there again, we're always going to be truthful, straightforward, and honest, and we have nothing to hide.
Yep. All right. So moving on, the question was, Kirby, is the growth of Lubbock being considered as we look at expansion of Jones AT&T Stadium?
Again, if we talk about what our immediate facility plans are, we're talking about with football, we're talking about build out of the east side of Jones AT&T Stadium for administration offices, and then we're talking about the expansion, renovation of the football training facility building, and then we'll talk about the south end zone. So the expansion discussion will come with that south end zone conversation. So we still have some runway in front of us before we get to that conversation or needing to make any decisions. Would we consider that? Absolutely. At the same time, we're considering people's viewership habits and how that's changing and the fan experience and what people want in a game day experience. So while the population growth of Lubbock will be a piece, it will only be a piece of the totality of things that we look at. And
there's been some really cool ideas presented for that south end zone. So I don't know what we'll end up going with, but there's been some really great and I think kind of cutting edge ideas for that area.
Yeah, there have been, and again, a lot more conversation, discussion to have there.
Kirby, once Texas Tech is officially with ESPN Plus, will Texas Tech TV go away, or there be content on both platforms?
That's a good question. Probably on both platforms. ESPN Plus will be required to carry X number of productions and content. We anticipate that they would put everything that we produce up there, but maybe there are certain Olympic sport events or interviews or coaches shows that they don't put on ESPN Plus. We'll still want those on Texas Tech TV. So sitting here today, it would be my anticipation that both platforms would exist at the same time.
Yeah, so I think the ESPN is obligated to carry 50 events, right, on ESPN Plus. Right now on our third tier with Fox, they carry 30 events. And I think it'll be a game changer for people once they get used to how all that goes. And we are trying to think of some ideas, some content to put on Texas Tech TV that keeps Texas Tech TV relevant. Kirby, Chris Beard has been outstanding, not only on the floor, obviously, but in the recruiting trail. But so this is primarily about recruiting. When you hired him, did you expect him to be this kind of recruiter?
Well, he expected to be this kind of recruiter.
Yeah, he expects
I mean, he's absolutely right that he wasn't interested in coming to Texas Tech to be in the tournament every other year, and that was our first conversation. He wanted to make sure expectations were in alignment, and I think his press conference, he said, "I am coming to Lubbock, Texas, to Texas Tech to go to the Final Four and win the national championship." That's been his focus each and every day, and to do that, you're going to have to recruit the very best talent in the country, and that's what he's doing. So he expected it, and that's a lot more important than anything I would expect. But I saw Chris's drive, his passion, his focus, his energy, and determination. And when you have that sense of urgency about you and how you approach your job each and every day, there's nothing, sky's your limit. And we've definitely seen that with the growth of this basketball program under his leadership.
All right. That's all we got time for. So thanks for all of your questions. Thanks so much for listening. If we don't see you in Midland tonight, we'll see you at the arena tomorrow to see the Lady Raiders, or out at the John Walker Soccer Complex on Friday to watch the Red Raiders soccer team, or Saturday at Jones AT&T Stadium to see the football team, or Sunday at Barnes & Noble for the signing of Chris Beard's coffee table book. All those places. See you at one or more or all of them. And look forward to that. So have a great rest of your week. For Kirby Hocutt, I'm Robert Giovanetti. Thanks so much for listening. You've been listening to the Kirby Hocutt Show here on Double T 97.3 and 100.7 The Score.